Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Patrice Johnson, the Vice President for the Center for Policy Analysis and Research and the Leadership Institute for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. And I am so excited to welcome you to one of the best sessions, Emerging Leaders Session, Protest to Power. Today, we will hear from millennial and Gen Z voices as we examine this generation's impact on social justice issues and their path forward to changing our world. So before we jump in, I'd like to introduce Congressman Andre D. Carson, who is now serving in his 7th full term as a U.S. House of Representative. He has established himself as an influential leader and respected public servant, fighting for good paying jobs, economic growth, and safer communities. Congressman Carson consistently fights for the middle class, securing hundreds of investments in public safety and infrastructure and education. He is truly the person to help us start the Emerging Leaders Session. So please join me in welcoming Congressman Carson.
Hello, this is Congressman Andre Carson, the representative for Indiana's 7th Congressional District and proud member of the Congressional Black Caucus. I'm honored to welcome all of you to this Emerging Leaders Session. You know, you're all here because you have a talent for leadership and a passion for social justice. And I hope that this session inspires and strengthens your efforts to uplift Black people and to create a better world for all of us. You know, I've long said that in order to create change, we need outside agitation and inside instigation. That means making noise in the streets, but also getting seats to the halls of power. You know, the emerging generation of leaders has utilized technology and social media in new and effective ways to bring about change with tremendous success. It's my hope and belief that young people will continue to effectively organize, protest, campaign, and win elections using 21st century tools. This session will help provide you with the knowledge and insight to help use them effectively and how to leverage it to gain power. There's so much more we can do to ensure equality and justice for all, and I know you're going to help get us there. Thank you, and keep up the great work.
Thank you for joining us, Congressman Carson. It's an honor to have you for this discussion and to kick us off. Without further ado, let me introduce our moderator for this session, Mr. Dwayne Barnes, Jr. Dwayne lives at the intersection of technology, economics, and urban culture. He currently serves as a community engagement analyst in Detroit at the Michigan League of Public Policy, in which he provides training and strategic partnerships for community partners. In 2013, Dwayne was the recipient of the Spirit of Detroit Award for his work with Project Better Man, a prostate cancer awareness, education, and prevention organization in Detroit. So please welcome Dwayne Barnes to help us with this amazing conversation.
So I want to take a couple moments and thank you guys for having me today. I want to have a really good group that I want to talk to today about a lot of issues around emerging leadership. I'm going to introduce them quickly, and then I'll let them give a Cliff Notes version of themselves. But prior to doing that, I want to introduce myself. My name is Dwayne Barnes. I'm from the Michigan League for Public Policy, and I'll be leading this discussion. So my first guest I want to welcome to the stage, so to speak, is Commissioner Mariah Park, District 2 Commissioner from Athens, Georgia. And I just want you to come on and just give us a quick hey and a quick kind of Cliff Notes introduction, and then I'll keep moving down the line.
All right. Thanks so much for introducing me, Dwayne, and for everyone for joining us today. My name is Mariah Parker. I've served as County Commissioner in Athens, Clarke County, Georgia since 2018. I'm also a PhD candidate in language and literacy education at the University of Georgia and a hip hop artist.
All right. Thank you very much. Also want to bring to the stage someone from the city that I live in, City Council woman from District 5, Mayor Pro Tem Mary Sheffield. Thanks for joining us today. And give us a quick, Cliff Notes. Hey.
Hey, thank you for having me, Dwayne, and I'm glad to be here. So I have been serving on the City Council since 2013. At the age of 26, I was the youngest to ever become a councilwoman. So I made history at the age of 26. I then got reelected and now serving as the youngest pro tem in city of Detroit. So just honored to be here. Aside from my council work, I am also a minister as well too. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And last but never least, a young brother here who's been, doing this thing as well, Mr. Tyleek M. McMillan. Come give us a quick, who is the National Director of Youth and College Programs for the National Action Network. Give us a quick what's up.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. Tyleek McMillan, National Youth Director of National Action Network, one of the nation's leading civil rights organization. I also serve as a policy advisor here in the Washington, D.C. Bureau. So excited to be here.
Absolutely. And we're a pleasure to have you. So, we don't have you for long, but I definitely want to have a really good conversation, especially, given just the background of everyone we have here, we have people that can really speak to the issue. So I'm going to jump right in with the first question. So, with the ubiquity and reach of social media, what emphasis should we apply to the role of social media movements in mobilizing a generation of young leaders? And to also accent that question, what have you seen? Are there any good examples of anything we've seen in that space around, using social media and movements to, mobilize the young generation of leaders? And I'll start with Mary Sheffield, and then we'll run the question through.
Sure. I think social media has played a huge role in a lot of the social movements that we see. And I think for me, I always tell young people or our emerging leaders to be very intentional about how we use social media. It can be a gift and a curse, right? I choose to use it as a gift and to be very intentional about what I put out on my platform. I think there is an opportunity to educate, to mobilize, to really guide people around issues and let young people see things that may resonate with them that they can begin to lend their voice to. So I think that it has definitely helped. When we think about Eric Gardner, it started from it started from a cell phone, a George Floyd cell phone, right? And so all of that was spread and the movement began to gain momentum, I think, via social media. So I think as young people, I think it's imperative that not only do we use social media for fun, but we also use it very intentional with making sure that we're pushing out issues that are important to us, educating our peers, and gaining that momentum around issues that we believe are important to us. So I think it's a great way to really help push the social movement.
Absolutely. Commissioner Parker, same question.
Yeah, I think that the way that social media has allowed us to democratize information, not just by making it more horizontal in the way that anyone can convey their lived expertise to a huge audience through means where folks may not ordinarily engage with traditional forms of journalism, but through social media, young people especially are able to challenge prevailing narratives that we see in a lot of our mainstream news sources, or coming from more authoritative, traditionally authoritative sources, and speak to their lived expertise, what they're seeing on the ground with social movements, what they're seeing on the ground with regards to the impacts of public policy of various kinds. And then as Ms. Sheffield said, also with mobilization of bringing people together en masse on a very short time span, or just amplifying concerns in the community where traditional journalism or other forms of traditional media might not have the relationships or connections in order for them to get those stories out. And so I think that's been incredibly critical for the elevation of young leaders in social movements we've seen in recent years. And something we should take really seriously and then try to engage with in order to both continue to raise up that leadership and also as members of organizations, elected officials, to leverage with regards to policy within the institutions where we work.
Absolutely. That's a really good point around, democratization of information. So that's a really good point there. Taliq, same question, knock it out the park. How have we seen, social media movements, in this kind of struggle? And how should we approach, having those movements, validated, with action behind them as well?
Of course, and I couldn't agree more with both what my fellow panelists said. I think social media is a tool, but it's not the end all be all to organizing. It's the on the ground grassroots movement that gets things done. It's the meeting people where they are on social media, but also meeting people where they are in the community. Being connected to the community. I think when we look at research, Pew Research has shown that over half of Americans were engaged on social media or on some form of social media activity dealing with engagement around political or social issues. But the thing is, you cannot just be a social media activist, as we call them, but it's the action that gets things done. It's the showing up. And as Rihanna would say, it's the pulling up. Tell your friends to pull up. It's the pulling up to election day. It's the pulling up to your local city council and your local school board meetings. It's the pulling up to your elected officials when they're not doing what you are asking them to do. And so it's the social media, and so it must take the action behind it. And that's why I'm grateful to work for a leader who understands the importance of media presence, but also the importance of action behind it, because it just can't be about satisfaction and getting your word out, but it must have action behind what you're tweeting or what you're posting on social media as well. So it's the social media and.
You know what? That's a really good point, and I'm glad you said that. And one of the points I wanted to raise as well, I think, social media also, and I think in addition to everything you guys said, offers a place to build community. And once you build that community, you can take it from, my phone and take it, like you said, to pulling up somewhere. So I think, and then even around information, from the most dense, books this thick to, turn it into a TikTok where people can really understand what the issue is. So there's so many ways to use and leverage it. And I think, we've seen in 2020 how, people were leveraging it to figure out, where they're going to protest, where they're going to fill out the ballot early, how they were going to do X, Y, and Z. So it was used in a lot of different ways. And I think you guys showcased a lot of different ways. Were there any organizations that or partners that you partner with that was doing some really good digital organizing, either 2020 or now, in any of your respective communities or even nationwide outfits that we should know about?
Two organizations in my community that I was really impressed with last year, particularly during pre-uprising, as you could say, but during the early throes of the pandemic, a lot of folks who were not previously familiar with the concept of mutual aid came together to make sure our neighbors had food. They were keeping their lights on. They had somebody to come to their kids. They had, if they need clothes for their job interview, they could get it. And so the role of mutual aid networks and the use of social media to, amplify the needs of the community and connect people who were struggling to sort of build a stronger community through, you might not be neighbors, you might not realize you're neighbors, right, but bringing people together in those ways, particularly through Instagram, to sort of give these visual stories of like the humanizing the people that are behind these calls to action, the need for our community fridge to get filled up, that picture out there of, family who's hungry, et cetera. Utilization of those platforms for mutual aid. And then there's a group in town called the People's Budget Athens, who are calling for democratization of our city budgeting process that used Instagram, Twitter, Facebook and Zoom, other platforms like that to hold people's assemblies where they actually get input on what they wanted to see in the 2021 Athens Clarke County budget. And so I think they did a really good job as well of using social media to both as grassroots political education, and then actually to draw people together to have in-person conversations, as Talik was saying, around what sorts of changes they would like to see on the policy level.
Absolutely. So, I love to have the conversation where we talk about it in theory, but then we talk about, actual, actions that are happening with people using, these tools. So I love, making it that way. So let's move to our kind of next question here. And I think this is one I really can't wait to get you guys' insight on because, I'm speaking to people who can actually speak to this and not just pontificate. So how can we better equip and connect young leaders to better advocate for the causes that are affecting them? And I want to start with Talik on this one. How can we do that?
Yeah, of course. I think helping young people understand that they don't need to be the Superman of everything. It's okay to have a focus on certain issues. I think we cannot be experts in everything. I think, it helps with, even not being an expert in everything. It helps with self-care and mental health because you don't want to overburden yourself with trying to be there in every single issue. So I look at this analogy that, Rev says to me all the time, as a chef, has different dishes. The chef has his own specialty that chef knows it can cook. And so we think of this movement as a buffet style. We have so many different foods on the platter, but you have one dish that you really know how to make. You know how your mama really got that one dish that you know how to make. You become an expert in that dish, and you specialize in that. And so that thing that makes your heart burn, the thing that keeps you up at night, you become an expert in that. But don't try to overburden yourself with trying to be Superman and save the world.
Prior to doing that, I want to introduce myself. My name is Dwayne Barnes.
Focus to it and continue to move forward. And that's how I believe we can better equip and giving young people the resources to really dig deeper into those issues that they genuinely care about.
Absolutely. I love that framing. The person who can bring the potato salad to the cookout and the one who can't, you're going to be the one that at whatever dish that you have, you bring that, be it organizing, be it, in front of people, be it, just being a soldier, whatever that is. I think that's very well said. Ms. Sheffield, same question, how can we better prepare our young leaders to advocate on the issues that are affecting them?
I think what has worked well with me here locally on the ground in Detroit, number one is just really reaching people where they are. You know what I'm saying? And I know for our generation or for younger generation, a lot of time it's through music, it's through artists, it's through hip hop, right? And so bridging the politics and that together really helps people kind of understand the importance of it. And it's really reaching people where they are. And so we do a lot of things where we have local artists come out, they'll perform, but then we'll pause and we'll talk about criminal justice reform. We'll talk about gun violence, mental health, affordable housing, whatever it may be. And so you're bridging the two together. Another thing, actually going door to door, right? And empowering people, connecting the dots. I think oftentimes, sometimes people don't get involved in politics or these social issues because they don't necessarily understand how it resonates with them and their families. And so when you really break it down, like, hey, let me tell you how this actually impacts you, I think people are more equipped and really want to be involved in social justice issues. And then lastly, I think it's important too to identify kind of what the gentleman just mentioned. What is your passion? What are things that bother you, that upset you? It's not just always what you're passionate about, but it's also things that upset you, that make you angry, and really identifying those things with young people and figuring out how they can utilize their voice. And as you mentioned, you don't have to be a perfect leader, a perfect person, but you can offer something around these issues in the overall movement around social justice as well.
Absolutely. I think you made a really, really good point around marrying, the culture with the politics, because I think it serves both. One, it brings everybody to the table, but then it also brings community there. So the people who want to work with community can work with them there. The people who love that artist who just saw him on the Breakfast Club can come get their autograph and hear the good stuff. So there's so much to happen. And our last year, it was something like that happened in the city that was very lit, that you guys led the 2020 voters registration effort. So that was, top notch. So I know you're speaking from what you know. Commissioner Parker, same thing. I want to throw this one to you. How can we better equip our young leaders to advocate on the issues that are affecting them?
Well, I think it all starts with deeply listening to the young folks that are advocating for change, because I think that as folks with power who may have more institutional knowledge, who may have been in the game longer, I might be tempting to enter a conversation ready to explain, why things don't really work that way. Or, actually, this is how you should do things. Or if you want to do things my way and actually get stuff done, or these are the reasons why maybe you should scale back the scope of your vision, et cetera. It's really tempting for more seasoned leaders to want to constrain the expectations of these young activists who want so much and really want to transform the world. And so thinking very carefully, I think, as we listen to young leaders about how we both teach them or we both share institutional knowledge with them. These are the avenues of power and how they operate. And this is how you get an ordinance passed. And this is how you throw down at a city hall meeting and express yourself. The framework in which all of that operates, without telling them what is and is not possible through those channels, without saying this is actually we can't do that, so let's reel it in a little bit. So there's a very careful dance, I feel, in cultivating young leadership between sharing the knowledge that we have as folks that are part of the system or part of systems of various kinds, more experience within institutions and organizations where we wield power, without limiting their imaginations. And so just reflecting on that question frequently as we engage with young leaders and listen to their concerns authentically, rather than entering into the conversation ready to respond with why some of their demands may not be possible or might not be what we would choose for ourselves.
Absolutely. Jump right in. Yep.
And I would add really fast. A lot of times, myself being just 24 years old, I walk into these rooms and I self-doubt myself sometimes. And so I say to the young people who are listening today, that when you walk into a room, you deserve to be in that room, and your voice and your story matters. And so, as Shirley Chisholm would say, if they don't give you a seat at the table, you bring your own folding chair. And we saying if they don't give you the table, you bring your own folding table. And so just know that your voice has a story behind it. You deserve to be in there, and you walk in there with your head held high, because as I said, your story matters, and you deserve to be in that room.
Absolutely. Well said. You kind of beat me to where I was going next. So, I was along the same lines, and I want to throw this out as well. So, one thing that I heard Commissioner Parker mention, and then Talik mentioned as well, is kind of this dance between you belong there and, kind of learning from, previous generations, before you. And I know in the city where I come from, there's a line between kind of the haves and the have-nots around information and around kind of understanding how to do it. So you have people who are just running real fast and have the ambition. Then you have some of those who kind of have the okay through traditional leadership, and you working through an intergenerational space. And then you have some kind of outside in who just, have the ambition, but don't know how to get in. I see, for us to have made these movements that we've made, some of us had, the guidance in the end. Some of us just had the ambition and didn't stop. How do you navigate it? How do you tell, these young leaders who are used to kind of moving fast, how to find that road to move forward and not get blocked? And that's anyone.
That one first, if you'd like. Yeah, I think studying history and understanding the timescales on which we have operated helps young activists. It's helped me a lot, especially develop a sense of patience that is very important to balance with, I think, our youthful sense of urgency, but so that we don't get discouraged in the battle where it's like, oh, we didn't, get this policy passed this year, so we give up. To know that we're, in dismantling systemic oppression, we are dealing with 400 years of history on our hands, that people have been fighting for, a better world throughout this time, and overcoming in piece by piece through that. And so looking ahead to a day without racism entirely, we might be looking at another 400 years. And so to put into perspective what our role then as activists is within the time that we are given on this earth. So, hopefully it'll be around till I'm 100 or something like that. And within that time, what can we get done? And so if we don't get something done this year, perhaps by year 5 or year 10, we will finally have accomplished that goal, that bold transformative goal that we set out to accomplish back then. In my public service, I look at ideas like fair, free public transportation, fight for 15, things that have been planted in the public consciousness and in the public discourse around what people of our city deserve 10 years ago, that this year in our city budget, we were able to accomplish. But it's like that patience, that idea, that sense of you're in it for the long game, and that sense of time scale. We got a long, long battle ahead of us for a lot of the things that we, a lot of the visions of the world that we want to see. And so having that patience with self, patience with process, coupled with that sense of urgency to sort of spur us forward is really important to help cultivate young leaders, I think.
And the race is not given to the swift nor to the strong, but it's given to those who can endure. And things do not happen overnight. As Commissioner Parker mentioned, it's about those who can endure, who have the patience. And I'm reminded in the words of my mentor, Reverend Sharpton, who says, it's not about a generation who knows it all or a generation that has all of the energy, but it's about our synergy together, that this movement works. It's a big machine. We all can't do it by ourselves, the young, the old, black, white, yellow, or green, but it's about us all working together collectively to work towards this common goal of liberation and ensuring that we get what we know we deserve in this moment.
Absolutely. Very well said. I can't even add anything to it. So let's move on to the next one. So, I think this is a very interesting question because, and you guys can speak to this one as well. Going from, I'll phrase it this way. How can we support young activists who have transitioned from protesting and working in grassroots movements to holding seats in elected office to, actualize their movement goals. We kind of mentioned it earlier, but it's a different kind of beast from, organizing to, trying to get something through a budget process or through a legislative process, and still, helping transition to say, this is what we wanted. This is our bold vision. And this is kind of how we get it through the processes that are in front of us. And I'll go to Commissioner Parker to kick this one off.
Great, thank you. So, I started out, I became a commissioner, much like Ms. Sheffield. I first held elected office when I was 26 years old. And so I'm still technically young, I guess, but I've been in there for a minute. And I guess today, if I were to be mentoring a young leader into the transition I had to make from being an activist into holding elected office, I would definitely try to cultivate an appreciation and a sense of how to stay in touch with social movements. Because I think that very swiftly, as you get into the system, as you become, the institutions that we're trying to change, you lose sight of what you came to do, or people discourage you very quickly. They very quickly try to discourage you, like, oh, you're optimism and idealism is really cute, but we don't actually do that kind of stuff here. And they try to beat you down like very early on, but that rootedness in social movements that you came from, that inspired you to run, and figuring out what your new relationship to them is, since you actually hold the seat of power and can translate a lot of their maybe perhaps more idealistic demands into concrete pieces of public policy, sort of serving as that bridge and trying to convey some of that new institutional knowledge that you're carrying with you back into the community so that people can have more informed struggle. Also figuring out, like, all right, what are we working with here? What are we trying to get done? And how can I carry that with me back to City Hall or back to the Senate, et cetera? And so I've been navigating that myself in my first 3 years in office, and would definitely want to help coach others in doing the same a little more smoothly than I have, perhaps, if they were themselves making that transition from the world of activism to the world of formal public service.
Absolutely. And I want to follow that up. I want to bring Talik in the conversation again here. So even as, I know in your role from, the community stuff to the, in the halls of, where legislation is done, how do you stay connected to those who went from, this was a burning star, activist who ended up getting elected, and now they do need to stay connected to what's real. How do you stay connected to those rising, political figures to make sure their message stays on, what's most important as they seek, to get elected?
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with what Commissioner Parker stated. It's about staying connected to what's happening on the ground and not losing your backbone or where you come from, or understanding that. But first, I would say it's a blessing to be young, gifted, and I would add to be young, gifted, and Black. In my own opinion, and it's a blessing, to allow you to make it to these positions, and to not become a figurehead, but to remain, planted in who you are and what you stand for, even in the face of adversity. Because as Commissioner Parker stated, they're going to try to tell you what you can and cannot do.
Right.
But I tell you, don't think it's crazy, or think it's made up for you to believe that it's possible, for you to believe, that we deserve healthcare, and we deserve, education, and we deserve for our trans and LGBTQ youth to be safe in their community, that we deserve these things. So don't think that it's, outrageous. But what I would say to those is to stay connected to where you come from, stay grounded in where you come from, never give up your beliefs or your values. And I believe that we can support them by showing up for these young people, not only when things aren't going so well, or when there's issues that that cause something to rise in us, but show up for them when things are going good for them, and to lift them up as they're pushing for better legislation or whatever is in the mix, but just showing up for them during the good and the bad. But I would main point would say, just stay connected to the ground and stay connected to your beliefs and your values, even though they would try to sway you like the wind when you get up in there.
I think Tali brings up a really good point. I just wanted to drive it home by saying, because that's really refreshing for me to remember that it's not just about oh, are you having the town halls? Are you open to calls from constituents? Are you responsive when people come to City Hall? But are you still getting a beer with these people like you did before you got elected? Are you still showing up at the cookout? Are you still showing up at the baby shower? Because when it becomes all about work, like, oh, our relationship is just about policy. Oh, our relationship is just about community, uplift. And it's not about joy, and it's not about, communing authentically. It's not about like just building because we care deeply about each other. Those relationships can become strained. And so absolutely showing up in good times as well as work times is critical, I would say.
Don't just show up to Sunday service when it's time for election cycle. You should be showing up.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Exactly. I think that's very well said. I also wanted to add, I think one way or a way that I envision, I would love to get you guys' take on this, staying connected and, keeping it, not just as a transactional relationship, is also through information. I think one thing that was really impressive about, especially last year, I think, and into now, is we were talking about issues that I think really affected people. So when you think about an issue like defund the police, that's a state or city budget issue. So you can say, okay, I have a hand in city budget. So now in order to understand this, let's understand how the rest of the city budget works. Let's understand how appropriations work. Let's understand how we get here. So I think providing that information as well, or even, issues around, I know in our state and yours as well, around voter access and limiting and trying. So there's issues that I think really, really resonate with people. But once you can really explain it in those times where it's not just transaction, I'm just here at the baby shower, I'm here at the cookout, and we just happen to have a conversation. And I think that's very important. One other thing I wanted you to throw in, Commissioner Parker, you kind of threw it in there a little bit. What is something you wish you knew about your how this transition would be from still an activist, always an activist, but from activist and an elected official as well?
Right. I mean, ultimately, like I've become the government, right? Like I've become this thing that we fought. And so at the end of the day, I am, in a certain sense, a figurehead of I am now the adversary to a certain degree with a lot of the young activists who, like, well, I might be working. All right, what can we get done in the next 6 months? What can we get done in this budget cycle? What can we get done in this certain voting meeting? They're like, we want change now. And I want change now too, but like working with, I got a bunch of elected colleagues. We got budget shortfalls. We got this, we got that. We got preemptions by state law. Figuring out, okay, what's a more realistic time frame in which we can accomplish this, and pushing forward nonetheless with that sense of urgency, with that sense of patience as well, with the knowledge of how long it does take to make transformative change. But a lot of times the activists on the outside, they take that as a no. They take that as a loss or a failure or an abandonment. And so on these personal levels that Talik and I were just discussing about, having these authentic relationships where we show up in good times and bad. Oh man, it can make the cookout a little awkward sometimes when it's like, so what happened with the non-discrimination ordinance? Like, yo, what's good? I thought we was all on the same page about this. And so wrestling with that of like, trying to maintain those relationships, because I think, popular movements, when people are coming together and rising up for change they want to see, trying to stay plugged into that and translate that into policy, while navigating that, public policy is a lot more nuanced than sometimes we like folks that are like new to the political sphere understand, and not discounting that they bring a lot of lived expertise that's very valuable in crafting that public policy, but how to manage expectations and keep people's eyes on the prize in the long term for what we can accomplish when we keep pushing over years and years and years, and not necessarily in a single budget cycle or a single voting meeting, is something that nobody got me ready for before I became an elected official.
Right. All right, let's change the pace real quick. Let's move forward. We talked about helping, develop young people or young leaders. We talking about, things we wish we would have known and how can we transition? I have a question around, what are some ways that educational institutions can or currently work to mitigate barriers that may otherwise discourage young leaders from engaging in the political process? So another way to ask that question, that was a mouthful. I like to ask it like this, what can we do through, our K through 12, our undergrad, post-education system to kind of stir up the gift, so to speak, of, not only in a civic engagement, but, political engagement like we've been talking about earlier. And I'll throw this to Talik and then we'll keep it rolling.
Yeah, first and foremost, as the conversation is happening, I think this is a great question. As it's happening currently, around telling the whole truth of the history of this country.
Right.
At first, it begins there. It begins at telling our kids the truth. It begins with telling the full history and trauma that this country has made Black, brown people, and Indigenous people endure. It begins there. And so telling the whole truth. But also I'm proud to be a product of an HBCU, North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. So shout out to my Aggies out there. And a school that taught me not what to think, but how to think. And I think when we have institutions who does that, who aren't afraid to not be engaged around the conversation of social justice and politics, that's when we begin to bring out this notion that you deserve to be involved in this. So right. I believe it's this notion of young people that's saying, oh, I'm too young to be worried about what's going on with Social Security. I'm too young to be worried about, what's going on with property taxes, et cetera. And so understanding that what happens now in this moment affects generations from now. And so starting those conversations early, being engaged, what educational institutions can do, as Commissioner Parker mentioned, history is so important. And I believe when you know about your history, then you really know how to move forward. It is because I am aware of what happened to Medgar Evers. It is because I'm aware of what happened and to Martin Luther King. It is because I'm aware of what happened, in these moments of our history, that I am able to step into this moment in the fullness of it and accept it, because I am aware of where I come from. And so I believe it first starts there, because when you know who you are and whose you are,
right,
don't take me to church. You can really move forward and step into your greatness. So I think it starts with history and really not being afraid to be engaged in these conversations initially.
Commissioner Parker, same question. How can we leverage, our traditional educational systems to, stir up the gift of civic engagement, political engagement, history, all those things that we would want to see our young people, getting involved early and learning about these kind of processes and why they're important?
Yeah, I think Telly brings up a great point about studying history, understanding where we came from. I think that also a willingness and a candor and having the courage to also connect our curricula to what's happening today. Very tempting. It's very tempting to say like, oh, this is a chemistry lesson. This is how chemicals bomb, blah, blah, blah. This is how you factor in in algebra. But like, but also tying that to how can we, where do we see this in our everyday lives? What is the relevancy to our everyday existences? And then also looking ahead to the future, how can these tools that we're learning in our public education system be leveraged to make the world better? So how do you want to apply what you learned today to change something that you don't like? I think that bringing that relevancy to our curricula through tying it both to the present and giving students a sense of hope and a sense of utility, where they can then translate these skills into something they can use to change the future, are a way of both engaging students more deeply in the curricula itself, like the standards that were mandated to have them teach or have them learn rather, but also cultivating that sense of civic engagement that we want, that we need, frankly, in order for the next generation of leadership to take the helm and take it confidently.
I definitely agree. I love what I'm hearing. I think, for me, it's always around, I think, and not this kind of boring way of doing it, but just kind of civics, like having people just understand how the process works. Like, I think it's a lot more palatable once you know how it works. Like we do complex things all the time. Oh, I learned how this complex thing works. Oh, it makes sense. These are the people. This is what I'm mad about. This is who I can talk to. Like, just so many ways to make it, take it from this deep policy stuff that we do down to just saying, man, there's something you mad about, something you don't like. These are the people that can change it. Let's go figure out how we can get some kind of change. But you can't go to this person because they can't change it. So I think that's a really good point. Now, I also want to kind of look forward a little bit. So, we've been through 2020. We're, over halfway through 2021. There's been so much that's been going on around, like I said earlier, around voter access, around just kind of stay sane and keep your joy, around, just kind of keep the movement moving forward. So, what are you guys working on kind of individually and collectively as your organizations and in governments that we should be looking at, or we should be keeping our eyes on, or goals that you're looking to meet in the next, however long? But what's in front of you? What are you working on now, and what should we know about here moving forward? And I'll take it to Talik first, and then I'll jump over to Congress. I'm sorry, I guess I'm speaking it, but Commissioner Parks.
Again, look, Congresswoman Parker.
Man, Parker. Yeah, I'm sorry, I said Parks.
It's all good.
And so, right now, National Action Network, of course, we do a lot of work in regards to criminal justice reform as we're looking at voting rights. But now, as we see in front of us, state legislatures across the country are attacking that very fundamental right to vote. And so, ensuring that we fight back against that. In this moment, it's far too much at stake to lose. The fact that the more of the Voting Rights Act is being gutted as we see it right before our eyes, and it's crazy to me to think that we not only need one form of ID but two form of IDs. It's crazy to me that now we have, early voting sites being taken away. And so I think now in this moment, we look at voting is such at stake. When we look at how our communities are being policed, how feeling safe in our own communities, when we look at education resources, I'm doing some work now around student debt cancellation, as we understand that this is a racial equity issue, that it's not just, taking some money off of people's loans, but this is a racial equity issue that can invest in communities. And so focusing on some of those things at a national level is some work that we're doing here at the National Action Network, and a long list of thousands of other things that we all handle at once. But those are some of the main things here. And we're trying to continue to push the needle because we are the National Action Network. We are not the National Satisfaction Network.
I hear that. All right, Commissioner Parker, same question. What you working on? What's next? What should we be keeping our eyes on?
Yeah, so, I was very involved in the uprisings in 2020, but translating the demands in the streets as best I could into concrete pieces of public policy at the local level. And so we're still working on that sort of transformation of our understanding of public safety and the way that we can address it on the front end preventatively by investments in our community that get at the roots of crime and harm. And so looking at a cross-section of the various different community factors that give rise to community violence and destabilize our communities. I've been reading a lot of research about the efficacy of blighted property remediation and the effects of the built environment on levels of crime in a community. And so on the basis of that, on the basis of, throughout the pandemic, our local government dealing very heavily in food assistance for people that were struggling economically, thinking about the ways that economic precarity in general will give rise to criminal activity in a community, looking at across all these levels and all these layers of, what makes our community unsafe, and actually pushing forward a project for a series of municipal community gardens that could employ young folks, to give them a positive sense of pride in their community that's not related to gang activity or hanging out on the block, but actually building something that can feed their neighbors, building a skill set that will make them more employable in future, beautifying some of our blighted neighborhoods so that people have a stronger sense of pride in place, so they're not as likely to engage in criminal activity because they value where they live, and also helping stabilize our families on a nutritional level by making sure people have, a fresh box of veggies every week. And then on outside of the realm of public safety, also thinking about the existential threat of climate change and, breaking away from a food system that is exploitative and oftentimes relies very heavily on fossil fuels for things to be shipped from one part of the country to another. Instead, having these local food systems that people can rely on to sort of break out of that chain. And so both from a public safety perspective, from both a sustainability perspective, that's a project that I've been very, very invested in the last couple of months and excited to see it come to fruition in the months that come.
And also flagging the importance of the intersection of tech and civil rights. That has been a really big importance. As we understand, we saw through this pandemic the disproportions And as you know, as we say here at NAN, we can't go back to what the old ways were. As we saw, the pandemic showed a huge disproportion, not only in broadband or internet accessibility, as it relates to, you know, how students of color have access to computers or internet, and that big issue, or around, you know, tech and so many other things, but really just honing in on those disproportions that we saw through the pandemic, and not going back to the old ways, but really moving forward and being able to sustain communities as we move forward in time. So tech is the new civil rights issue in this day and age.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to pivot. That was I'm intuitive. I'm glad you got it. So I run a think tank called Social Tech that looks at the creation, consumption, and impact of technology in urban communities. And a part, I think, of what COVID showed us, and I want to get you guys' reaction to this, is how fine the line could be from the haves and the have-nots, just on accessibility to broadband. Just that. We ain't talking about who can code. We're not talking about we're just saying who can you get online. And as you talk about that as a civil rights issue, as an environmental justice issue, as so many other issues, health issue, because you can't get connected. How do we approach this intersection of tech, civil rights, and justice as we move forward? Not just social media and TikTok and all those wonderful things, but as we look at the application and the people getting rewarded and people who are kind of being left out. And I'll throw it to Commissioner Parker first. I'm sorry. And then I'll let Talik come in and swing it home on that one.
So your question was about the relationship, the relationship of technology to people's access to information.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, that was a huge thing that was revealed. There was already a problem pre-pandemic that definitely was laid completely bare over the course of the last year. And so thinking about technology and infrastructure with regards to the broadband, et cetera, as a public utility, as a public good, just like water, just like electricity, just like any other basic human right at this point, because we need people to be, in order to have strong, stable communities, people need to get on in order to get, do their job obligation, do their homework, connect with family and friends, connect with resources they need for their mental health, their physical health. And so that definitely was something very transformative that emerged from our understanding of how our current systems were already failing, but those failures were exacerbated over the last year, for sure.
Absolutely. Talik, take us with it.
Yeah, I think, as Commissioner Parker said it well. John Lewis said, as I said that phrase, tech is the new civil rights of the 21st century. And so I think everything that we do is connected to the internet, as mentioned, whether that's filling out a job application, whether that's doing homework, whether that's working from home, as we have seen over the pandemic, whether that's healthcare wise, so much of our daily lives is connected. Going to higher education, so much is connected through that internet accessibility, and to fathom that the only device that most people of color have is a cell phone. Really shows that gap that we see. And so, as Commissioner Parker mentioned, as we talk about infrastructure, as we talk about broadband build out, it should be seen as a public good, and it should be an investment that happens within communities early on. And it should have already happened, but this pandemic has really shown those gaps. And I'm praying that with the emergency broadband benefit program that Congress passed and is out right now, folks will utilize that so we can ensure that folks are connected to the internet, and as we should really focus on how we could really make that permanent, because as mentioned, the internet is our pathway to success in this day and age.
Absolutely.
Take a second and sort of flip the idea on its head, because Talik said something really interesting where the only access a lot of people of color have to the internet is a cell phone. And we're very frequently framed in a deficit perspective, the things that we need. But I just wanted to highlight the power of what we do with what we have as well. The fact that, as Ms. Sheffield said earlier in the conversation, like, we would not have had that uprising last summer if not for a cell phone. We've looked recently at, Black TikTok creators going on strike saying, no, we're not producing any content because it keeps getting stolen by, non-POC. Like, the power of the trends that we generate using just our cell phones. And so the importance then, we do powerful things with the limited technology we have. We also want to make sure everyone has that opportunity to express that genius by making sure we have equitable access as well.
And that, I will have that as the final word. That's exactly where we're moving forward to. Tech for all, tech for us. I want to thank everyone on our panel today. Amazing conversation. I want to throw it back to Dr. Johnson. I'm Dwayne Barnes. Thanks for your time today. We had a great discussion.
Thank you to Mr. Barnes, Commissioner Parker, Tyleek, and Mary. This was a phenomenal, dynamic conversation. There was substance that was just pouring out of the discussion. I was taking notes. I was texting like, are you hearing this? Because you guys were really amazing. And I think that speaks to the fact that everyone on this panel is a millennial leader. They are representing our generation, and it speaks volumes to where we are going and how we're going to meet a mark. It might not be the full scale, as Mariah mentioned, but we're going to get somewhere under the leadership that we're hearing from these remarkable generational voices. So thank you for joining us. I'd also like to thank Congressman Carson for joining us. And I hope that you all will tune in to the rest of ALC. Thank you.